Finance Committee meeting to order. Can I get a roll call, please?
Mayor Cowie,
Here.
Chairman Grumhouse,
Here.
Alderman Novit,
Here.
Alderman Woodman, Alderman Goltra, Alderman Morsch,
Here.
Alderman Hanrahan,
Here.
Alderman Luby,
Here.
Alderman Palmer.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Kathy. First item on the agenda this evening is consideration of minutes from the Finance Committee meeting held on December 7th, 2009. Any changes or comments? Now I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is a discussion of the Gas Franchise Consortium. Ramesh, I think you are leading the charge on this one.
Trying to. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mayor, and members of the council. As you can see from that memo, we did have a franchise agreement with North Shore Gas. It was back in 1972, and it was for 25 years, and it expired in 1997. And during that time, after the expiration, we did have to try to contact the North Shore Gasons to see whether we should renew this program. But over the years, what happened was North Shore Gas was trying to come up with a model franchise agreement for all the communities rather than trying to get each and every community a different allowance for gas or different terms for gas. They were trying to come up with one common model ordinance for all the communities. And then 3 years ago, Illinois, as a state, most of the municipalities, they passed this right-of-way ordinance, which provided much stricter guidelines for all these other utility companies to do certain work, and then where they have to get a permit, they have to get inspections and all. So what North Shore Gas decided to do is that they said, like, okay, we have a lot of communities who have expired franchise agreements. We are still providing you with the franchise gas, but as a community, you should all come together and see if you can come up with a model gas franchise. So the Northwest Municipal Conference, along with the 9 other council of governments, they decided to form this consortium so that you got 74 communities who are going to be bargaining with North Shore Gas for most of the Lake County, and then you have People's Energy and NICOR for Cook and DuPage counties. So what in front of you is right now is for us to pass an ordinance and intergovernmental agreement to join this consortium. There was a fee which we paid $500. Once we join this consortium, then as a 71-member group, we have this voice to then get do the negotiations with the gas company. So right now in front of you is a intergovernmental agreement, like an ordinance to execute a intergovernmental agreement to join the consortium. And again, we are not committed to any other fees right now. This is just that you are part of the consortium to do the negotiations. So that's where that
Is the consortium going to hire counsel to negotiate this, or various members? Is someone going to volunteer from one of the communities to do it? How is that going to work?
Right. There is a steering committee and there's a negotiation committee. So Lake Forest is part of the steering committee. So once the steering committee will come up with a model, what they call is a model draft franchise agreement. And once we get that model, the draft agreement, then there's a negotiation team which is going to sit down with the gas companies and basically coming out with the fine details on the franchise agreement. And then they're going to go back to all the consortium members to make sure that they agree with the terminology of the franchise agreement. So that's where it is. Thanks.
There is a provision, though, David, on page 7 of the agreement regarding additional contributions.
Right.
Do we have any estimate of what that might be? Has the group put together an estimate on what?
I think we are at the process right now to come up with a draft agreement, and I think they're trying to get all the 71 members to join the consortium. There's a meeting of all the members on the January 27th. At that time, they're going to try to come up with an estimate, and then they have to run through all the municipalities. But they are going to hire a law firm to go do this.
Do we really think we're going to be better off with this? Don't we kind of end up, I mean, I can see why the gas company would love it, because they're going to get the weakest of everything all filtered into one, or either that or the strongest. And I just, you got to tell me what your point of view is on negotiation, but I don't know.
Well,
I'd
right
like
now
what your thoughts are.
Yeah, we're just keeping all of our options open
Yeah,
right
okay.
now.
Right.
Yeah, that's kind of how I read this,
Yeah.
because you can pull out.
We
Yes.
can
Oh,
pull
yes.
out.
You can pull out, and then we do have.
Voluntary.
Right now we are enforcing all the inspections, and we keep keep on them for all the restoration and the inspections and also, and with our right-of-way ordinance which we passed, we will still have that control on them. So it's not like they have a free right to do any work.
My sense is we don't have a ton of negotiating room on this, right? I mean, the ICC has sort of tied our hands.
No,
The legislature has sort of tied our hands.
No, the other way
we do
around.
because the right-of-way, that's one of the aspects of this franchise agreement is gonna be the right-of-way valuation. Right now, they have, we have like 120 central line miles, we got all the gas mains in our city right-of-way. So that's the leverage we use when we do the negotiation is,
Okay.
right now, you have all these facilities in the city right-of-way, and you're only providing us franchise gas to these few buildings. So we're trying to get a value for what their facilities are, and that's gonna be the bargain power for each municipality.
I do want to mention, though, that right now Lake Forest has one of the more
Yeah.
lucrative franchise
That is true.
agreements. Most of the North Shore communities do.
Right.
We're actually getting more than most other communities in the Chicago metropolitan area. And I think Alderman Grumhouse, to come back to your point too, is as we learned with AT&T, that if they don't feel they're getting their way, they do go to the state legislature and just bypass local jurisdictions. And so I could see potentially that happening in this case, and I think that's why they're trying to get something that's reasonable, that we think everybody can live with, and same with the various gas companies, because you're dealing with multiple gas companies here as well, because this isn't just People's Energy, it would also be whatever's in.
Nicor.
Nicor, right.
See, yeah, and the NICOR, they do different, they go by the amount of terms per month. See, Lake Forest and most of the North Shore community, North Shore Gas does it by franchise gas, whatever it's gonna be. They don't go by the amount of terms. So most of the Cook County and DuPage County, it's so many terms per month. Anything you exceed, you have to pay. So we are in a better situation with People's Energy and North Shore Gas.
Any other questions or comments on this?
Yep.
Do you want us to recommend this here and then also?
Yeah.
We're gonna bring it to meeting. Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the ordinance authorizing the execution of intergovernmental agreement establishing the Northern Illinois Municipal Natural Gas Franchise Consortium?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And we will have this on the regular city council agenda. The next item on the agenda was supposed to be a letter of credit for the benefit of Lake County Stormwater Management, but my understanding is we have rid ourselves of that. I don't know if either of you want to comment on that.
I'll
or
give
whether
you
we
a
just-
very brief overview. Initially, this was engineers talking, not finance people, and so the engineer,
I was wondering why in the world we would be requested to have a letter of credit.
under the Stormwater Management Commission rules, they do say that you will get some kind of financial guarantees, letters of credits and so forth, which typically works very well when you're talking with third parties, developers. I mean, the city does it a lot as well. They hadn't really contemplated working with municipalities in this capacity under the grant agreement. And so, at least from a staff perspective as MC, they didn't understand why it was a big deal. We met with them last week. We explained the cumbersome process it is, and that quite frankly, there was an easier approach. Kathy joined the meeting. We were able to walk through some options, and where they went back, looked at their rules and regulations, and determined that they could just take basically a cash deposit, put in an interest-bearing account, set aside to cover the guarantees, because we're not talking about a lot of money, and that it continues to reduce the principal over that period of time. So they're happy, we're happy, and there's no need now to follow through with the various bank documents.
Just by the amount of pages that were, I was able to take out of
Eliminated?
my packet. I think it was a very good move.
I know.
So,
Well, I think it opened their eyes when they saw, when they could understand how this was affecting municipalities. And the good news, bad news is the fact that we're one of the first municipalities to get this grant. So this is why they were in a learning process as well.
That's great. All right, next item is the fiscal year 11 budget revenues. As part of some other stuff we were doing, in part for the pension forum, Kathy had begun to put together some stuff on the 11 budget, and I thought it worthwhile, even though we were just starting the budget process, to have her spend some time on it tonight and, give everyone a preview of what we're gonna be looking at, and some of the things we're gonna have to be looking to do as we go through the budget process here over the next few months.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first slide we have is what we have been discussing with staff so that they have a preview of what is to come over the next several years. Everything is based right now on the 6-month of actual revenues. In your packet, you do have through December. I have verified that we do not have a lot of change from our forecast that we made based upon 6 months worth of history to 8 months worth of history. So as of now, these numbers still remain pretty close to what we are going to end up with in the budget, barring any changes in the next several months. We are forecasting for fiscal 10 to have a revenue shortfall of $1.256 million that will be offset by expense and other savings for a total use of fund balance of $316,000. The main reasons for the shortfall are the sales tax being down, the gas tax, income tax, telecommunication tax, and impact fees. In a minute, I'll go through those in a little more detail. As we move into fiscal 11, we have a shortfall of $524,000, and that's made up of not only the revenues continuing to go down within the income tax category, but also building permits being down, and the general levy is down due to the fact that most of the levy needed to be directed to the public safety pensions, and we had the CPI of 0.01%, along with very low growth. We also have been informed that Lake Bluff will be decreasing their contribution this year by $75,000 to the city. We don't have 100% confirmation that it's directed at Croya, but 99% a confirmation. So if these things hold true, we believe about $524,000 of cuts will need to be made to the budget. We do have two concerns, though. One is we did not decrease the income tax formula. We have decreased it slightly due to the economy, but if the state, in their budgeting situation, decides to change the formula of the amount that they distribute to municipalities, which is on a per capita basis, we will need to readjust the budget at the time that that is determined. We also have within the budget impact fees in fiscal 11 and building permit fees in fiscal 12 for the White Stable Vineyards. Again, if that does not come to be, we will have to make further adjustments to the budget. Looking forward then to fiscal 12 and 13, we do believe that if we do make permanent cuts of $524,000 and the state does not take in our income tax and the development goes forward as planned, we should be, have come to our new normal. Reasons for that is that CPI, I can confirm now that December came out, the December over December CPI is 2.7%. So we will be able to increase our levy next year by 2.7%. Our TIF is coming off in fiscal 13, so that'll free up about $500,000 of property tax that will come to the general fund. The pensions are showing much better returns, and Chairman Grumhouse and I did revise our forecast for the future returns, and we have building permits picking up. So that's basically an overview of where we think we're heading. I have further details of this showing you the actual breakdown of all of the majority of the large revenues. That's on the next slide there. And you can see that for fiscal 10, some of our large revenues that are forecasted, the biggest declines are sales tax, about $434,000.
And this is versus the original budget.
Versus the original budget of FY10, correct. We feel that it's not only the economy, but most likely the closures on Western Avenue that have affected that number. Gas tax, due to the decrease in the price of gas, we are forecasting about a $192,000 decline there. On the opposite side, though...
That's natural gas?
Natural gas,
Right.
correct. On the opposite side, though, we do have a savings within our own gas that we pay for the lights, so way below there under the expense savings. We're forecasting about a $58,000 savings in what we are paying for gas. Income tax is another large one, 160,000. The telecommunication tax, impact fees, electricity, and as you go down the line, you can see that a lot of these are either engineering fees related to development, hotel tax, less people staying at the Deer Path Inn, change in the tenants that we have in the Chicago Northwestern Station, so we'll be losing some rent revenue there. So that brings us to a total of 1.25 million in revenue shortages.
How are we down 30,000 leaf bag stickers?
We thought that was interesting also, but,
We just raised that with the bundle,
Right.
the branches.
right, right, people are not buying,
Putting them in their cars,
Yeah.
delivering.
Driving them out.
Drive them to dump,
Stacking in
Right.
the yard.
burn them in the fireplace.
it does seem as if the residents are saving in every way possible.
I would have thought our total revenue from leaf bag stickers would have been about 30,000, so.
Yeah, that's about what it was when they told us.
No, it's,
Amazing.
Is it
What,
50?
Kathy, what does this, do to the overall fund balance?
Pardon me?
Doing the branches.
What's the overall fund balance gonna be? You know, we're taking out cash.
Oh, our overall fund balance is over 10 million. We do have about 3 that is not part of our reserve, so we do have 3 that could be drawn down for non-operating purposes.
Okay.
I think the plan is Kathy alluded to, obviously the 316,000 for this year, there's not much we're gonna be able to do about. But the 524 for next year, the expectation is we will make that up in the budget process. We will find necessary savings and cuts to get that to flat, which will then position us to be flat in 12 and 13 as well.
Yes, yes.
Bob, I just have a question about the Croy and the Lake Bluff. I know that when I was doing that exercise with the staff, that they were kind of projecting that it would go away, that Lake Bluff was probably going to take away the money. Are they going to evaluate then in terms of the balances of the services that go to Lake Forest and to Lake Bluff? I don't know if that can be done, but are they going to cut the Lake Bluff services of that, in terms of that $75,000, or is Lake Forest going to take the hit pretty much in terms of the services? I know it's kind of early, but has there been discussion?
Yeah, unfortunately, at this point, I can't tell you exactly what's going to take a hit, other than we have given each of the departments their target numbers. And as Kathy indicated, at least for planning purposes, we did take the assumption that $75,000 of revenue would not be coming from Lake Bluff towards Croy activities. It's not to say they're still contributing about 80,000, I think it is, towards Croy, but I think when they looked at it in comparison to what they were contributing to the seniors, they were paying a lot more on the Croy side than they were on the senior side. So one of the things that Croy staff will have to do is to look at how this affects their budget, what services might have to be cut, and then how are those various services allocated across the schools, the villages, the city, and so forth. And we'll be, letting you and all the other constituent groups know how that is going to fall out here over the course of the next couple of months.
Because, I mean, it's just, it kind of bothers me, and this is a little thing, and I know when I was chairman of the Parks and Rec, I pushed for this, is if our kids go to Lake Bluff Rec, they charge us $5. They come to Lake Forest Rec, they can come free. There isn't a non-resident fee, we don't check IDs, and they're kind of nitpicking us, and we're allowing them to use our services. And I'm just wondering if Croy is going to become that, where it's all Lake Forest paid for, and Lake Bluff is still benefiting from it. I mean, I think that they should share in the cost, obviously.
And they absolutely will. And I think part of the discussion also comes to the high school is contributing a little, so that further confuses and complicates it. And that's why I think we'll all have to sit down and say, where are the dollars coming from and where are the dollars going to in terms of return, if you will, on any contributions, whether it's Lake Bluff, District 65, 67, 115, or the city.
Okay, thank you.
Is our funding, you mentioned Lake Bluff relative to senior versus Croy, do we have a similar funding situation like Forest?
Oh, yes. Croy is, Oh, it's a larger contribution from the city towards Croy's budget than there is towards the senior budget, because seniors have a lot more income coming in through fees and charges than Croy does. That's something that Croy has just been starting to work on the last couple of years, but I would say up until 2 years ago, it was 95% property tax supported, where the seniors are probably 50,
Yes,
maybe?
yes, that's correct.
So,
Any other questions or comments on this? Kathy, did you get all the way through these slides?
I can move on to the next one that just shows the change between our estimated actual in fiscal 10 and the fiscal 11 budget. The main variances we have there, as I mentioned in the overview, is that our levy toward the general fund operation is actually going down by $187,000. We do forecast building permits to be down about $185,000. Income tax about 77, and Croy, that's the 75 there. We do have a few things going up, the biggest being the vehicle stickers, based upon the new fees that you passed last month. And the Lake Bluff and Knollwood ambulance fees will be rising to 100% of cost this year. That was a gradual increase over the past 3 years, so that will bring in another $158,000. And again, we have $173,000 worth of impact fees in the general fund.
Any additional questions on these from the
just a reminder that on March 19th, 16th, whatever that Monday is, that's the big budget day, so please make sure it's in your calendar, because that's one that will start sometime mid-afternoon.
Probably about 3 o'clock that day, but we will be discussing budget next meeting also, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, next meeting, just to give you a timing, the departments have all received their targets. The department heads are all working on their budget numbers. They are submitting their budget forms to Kathy by the end of this week.
Yes.
And then the first week of February, the first and second week of February, Kathy and I are then holding our department meetings. And at your February Finance Committee meeting, we may be going into executive session just so I can brief you on sort of what we're seeing. Because with a $524,000 reduction, as you might imagine, there's going to be some personnel changes as a result of that. And so I want to make sure that you're just sort of briefed about it before we then get into the March meeting.
moving ahead, I guess, we can touch on it, which is the flash report.
Right,
Got your
the
stuff
December
on.
flash report, again, shows that most of the revenues are still holding to the original forecast that we made based upon 6 months' worth of data. The one bright star is the real estate transfer tax. We're at $612,000 year-to-date. I took a look at it today based on what we received in January. It looks as if there's a possibility, if things continue to go as they have over the past 2 months, we may actually reach our budget of $890, which is really good because we had thought we'd be down to about $775. So there is a possibility of reaching that budget. Water, you can see we have a slight variance. Water sales usage to date is about 2.5% down from the previous year. So we do think that we will end the year about $150,000 lower in usage than the budget, and we are down about $70,000 in development fees within the water fund. This is also the first month that we're able to report the pump versus meter to you on a monthly basis. This is on the October and November, based upon the IDNR year, which begins October 1st. So for the month of October and November, we had a total unaccounted for gross percentage of water at 18.9%. After we get through with the IDNR allowances that are made for items such as main breaks and age of the pipes, we come to a 7.5% net unaccounted for water percentage for those 2 months.
All right, so the 18.9 is the amount we,
Is the difference between the water pumped versus the water metered or billed.
all right.
then all the IDNR allowances are taken that allow for things such as the age of the pipes, other unbilled
And
water.
what's the comparable number that we were using when we were doing all our, was that the 13, was that a 13 number?
Yes.
And
Yes.
is that comparable to the 7.5 or to the 18.9?
It would be,
Or neither?
the 13%, we were not able to, at that point, get down to the 7.5% net on a monthly basis. Now we are. So it would probably be comparable to the 18.9. And
So
we
it's
have
gotten
noticed
worse.
that this number
Right.
runs slightly higher in the winter versus the summer.
But November over November, when we had the historic November last year and we're up at 13, now we're up at 19?
I'd have to go back and check the records. I don't think we're any worse than we were last year. We're about the same.
Okay.
Because 13, I think, was
Average of all the
average
months.
of
Right,
the whole year.
right.
And I think one of the things that Kathy has mentioned that the staff is finding out is it's during these low peak times that we see the numbers going up, and actually during the high pumpage time, we get a lot closer between pumpage and meter.
But we don't have a thesis on why that might be, correct?
We've tried. Everything we can think of, we've evaluated.
You know, with the drop in water usage, I know that some of our larger water users are using a lot, or trying to use a lot less. Have we looked at their bills to see if they've dropped? I know Lake Forest Hospital is really working hard at cutting down on the amount of water and wastewater, and I know some of the office buildings are too. You go in and the sinks turn off, the, water flow limited coming out, all those things to it. And that would account a couple of big users. If they cut a big percentage off of that, that would show for the whole town as a big drop in water. So I think we should probably take a look at our biggest users and see if there is a change.
But when we broke it down by category last year, because we tried to dig into that,
We did.
No,
that
but
wasn't it.
since
No,
last
that
year,
was not it.
no, I'm not saying on lost water, but I'm saying just an overall downage in usage. I know, Lake Forest Hospital's really made it a
But when we compared the usage last year, and maybe it's different this year, but when we looked at it pretty hard last winter, my recollection was it was residential is what we,
When we looked at it last year, correct?
last year, and
Right.
it wouldn't take you long to look at that.
No, actually, now we,
6 big users and
We-
see if they've dropped.
yeah, we have reports that can analyze this much better than last year. So we're on that.
We don't have any answers.
Said with real confidence.
the flash report, when we say variance to budget, that's original budget, right?
Yes, original budget, yes.
All right. All right, well, we'll keep plugging along. Hope the economy keeps getting better. Any other questions on any of that? Moving on to other business, is there any other business? Bob, is there anything you want to try and pull forward here?
Well, the only thing, and I think I sent you an email on this as well, on the council agenda under the discussion on transportation, we were hoping this evening to have a report, a proposal, an engineering proposal, professional services agreement with Charlie Quandell to work with us on basically what this is pulling together the necessary data to build our case to Amtrak, Metra, IDOT, WISDOT to justify a stop in Lake Forest. And the reason for the holdup is not based on anything that Mr. Quandell has done or hasn't done. He's really been working for the past couple of months to try and get Amtrak and Metra and IDOT to agree on the scope of ridership analysis and the operational analysis, because that will serve as the basis for determining the price. And our fear is that they were going to ask for a huge comprehensive study. We just heard late this afternoon that they've actually agreed to a more nominal study, and so that should bring that cost down. But we don't have that number for you, but we will have it in time for the next council meeting. but this will be the foundation by which we will make our argument as to why it makes sense to have the stop at Lake Forest.
Okay.
All right, other than that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. I think the MOU, which was distributed, I can go in more detail at the council meeting tonight, but we have received verbal assurances from Metra, IDOT, Amtrak, and I believe Canadian National that they are in agreement with the proposed MOU. So hopefully if the council adopts it tonight in substantially the form attached, that we should be able to get the other parties to sign off and get moving on this as well.
And I would guess I would just add to Bob's comments that Bob and I have been pursuing funds to try to improve that whole entire area as far as, not just the rail, but the intersection and everything else that goes along with it, because it's a very difficult, congested area to begin with, and certainly there's also safety issues that go along with the whole rail and the Amtrak and everything in that whole corridor. So for many months now, we've been pursuing all kinds of leads. There's been a lot of discussion about President Obama talking about maybe federal funds. Again, there's a big article, I think it was, might have been today or yesterday, again in the Tribune, about President Obama pushing for the Midwest rail corridor and trying to extend funds in our area. So obviously it's to our benefit to try to get ahead of this and to see if we can try to grab some of those funds and get some improvements in that whole, again, that whole intersection, the whole rail, the whole corridor, the pedestrian, the vehicular traffic. So that's what we've been pursuing. And it's, again, it's trying to move mountains to get government to work, but if we can, and getting everybody on board, I just want to thank Bob and all his efforts with getting the, I think there's what, six parties on board to agree to the memorandum of understanding alone. That's a big task. So if they all can agree to agree, that's great, and then we can move forward to trying to see if we can get, again, push for those funds. And that's going to be the hard part. But we need all the help we can get, and anybody that has friends that can get us there, we're more than welcome to give them a call and ask them for help.
Well, Joe Sasbo, who's the Federal Railroad Administrator, he's from Chicago, and he's a good guy, a colleague, and somebody we can certainly talk to. I had some questions about this. Are we gonna? I mean, do we have a budget estimate? What an Amtrak station would mean? Do we have a process by which we're going to engage our residents to find out if they want it? I mean,
that is part of the.
Is that part of the next process step? Okay.
Yeah. Once you engage the consultant, if we had the professional services contract for you, that'd be part of what he goes through, is reaching out to the businesses, the residents, getting an identification of what that cost would be, and again, it's in such early stages. For example, they said, well, if you're going to do this, then we're going to want A, B, and C. And we said, well, we're not paying for A, B, and C unless we get this, and then what's the impact? And we'll also be able to look at what the economic impact will be on the businesses in that area as well.
Yeah.
Do we know have we discussed the cost of the consultant? And is that something that we will fund on our own?
That will be something we will have to fund on our own. We don't know that cost right now because that was based on waiting for the response back from Metra and Amtrak as to what they thought that the ridership analysis and operational analysis would be. One of the reasons that this individual was identified is because they have already done a lot of work on behalf of IDOT and a consortium of states along this Milwaukee-Chicago corridor on data. And so, at least based on our conversations with him, we were able to piggyback onto work that has already been done and has already been paid for by other agencies to help keep the cost down. I might go out on a limb and say I'm hoping it's going to be less than $20,000, but don't hold me to that, because that was something we initially talked about probably about 4 months ago.
So on the meeting tonight, are we just going to be looking to approve 1 and 3 and not 2?
The memorandum and then the appointment of the committee, right?
All right. Any other comments? Opportunity for the public to address the Finance Committee on any items? Nothing else, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned, council meeting at 7:30.
Wow.
No other items?